They want cycle tracks. Actually, what they want to be able to do is bike to a variety of goods and services, but feel as completely safe as if they're biking down a park trail. And that's what cycle tracks do. Cycle tracks provide a trail, albeit on street, but physically protected from passing vehicles, either with bollards, a raised curb, planters, or even parked cars. This example's in Long Beach, California. Here's a more handsome example in Vancouver, British Columbia. But you don't need anything elaborate. A college student at his last kegger grabbed all these red Solo cups and he placed it down the edge of the bike lane and found that even with these modest obstructions and barriers, cars passed him slower and gave him more room. New York City has become, in my opinion, and other urban planners and designers, the exemplar city for biking in America. They did like what other communities did, and when they looked at bicycle infrastructure, the very first facility they looked at was the painted bike lane. Well, we could just stripe our streets for a bike lane. And they realized that bike lanes do absolutely nothing to attract more bicycle riders. They did find that as soon as they started putting in cycle tracks, cycling in New York City exploded. Now cycle tracks are considered before any other bicycling facility, sharrows or share the road bike signs or even bike lanes. And wherever you have bike lanes, cycle tracks, you need to put in scads and scads of parking, just like you'd put in scads of parking for the automobile. It has to be very visible, and it has to be at our most popular destinations. And these are fun because it reminds bicyclists and motorists that 10 bikes can occupy the space of just one parked car. I also want to talk a little bit about bike share, because I know you are considering that. And I am a huge advocate of providing transportation choices for people. And I think bike share can do that in the right context, but not without a fully cohesive network of bicycle infrastructure, be it bike lanes or preferably cycle tracks. Just like I can't give a community 50 extra buses and expect them to leave their cars and ride the bus, I can't leave bicycles on the corner and expect people to hop on the saddle. They still have to feel comfortable and safe biking to their destinations. You start charging people for bikes. You start restricting the time they can spend on a bike. The one thing the bike has over the bus is that it's exactly like the automobile, in that for most people, you can leave anywhere you want, at any time you want, and go anywhere you want, at any time you want. Unfortunately, when you don't have a huge cycle share system, now you're limited on where you can go because you're now looking for places to return your bike. You can't stay out maybe as long as you want because there's a 30-minute time limit. Helmet laws discourage cycling and bike share programs. And if you're requiring someone to wear a helmet and then you're going to charge them to wear a helmet, that's another thing that makes biking completely unfriendly. And that's what I do. I want to talk about another controversial proposal here, or law here. It's my understanding that Seattle's bike share program was the first bike share program in a community with mandatory helmet laws. And I am convinced part of the problem, not all of it, but part of the problem is those mandatory helmet laws. And this was discovered by the British Medical Journal. What they found is that the evidence that cycling helmets reduce injuries is not conclusive. The grisly reality of it is if a bicyclist is hit by a car, you're messed up. Could be head, there's a lot of internal bleeding. The helmets don't necessarily save lives. But what it does show is that making people wear bicycle helmets drastically decreases cycling activity. And we all know they're fashion faux pas. But if you live in a community like Tacoma and you think that the helmet laws are not going to go away, there are options. One option, this was from an industrial designer in New York City. His name is Yves Bahar. I believe, and his project, Fuse Project, takes bicycle helmets and offers changeable skins, much like a changeable skin on your cell phone, so that you could change your skin, the bicycle helmet, based on the color or even the weather, if it's cold or warm that day. Yake, which is a company out of Copenhagen, takes the idea of changeable skins further and provides a variety of colors and hats, proving that bicycle helmets can actually be fashion friendly. Now I want to talk about walking. Again, every transit destination begins and ends with a walking trip. And many of our daily destinations should be, and often are, within a short walk, 10 minutes. How do we get more people to walk? Have you guys heard of WalkScore? So WalkScore is a very popular tool for real estate developers, for apartment seekers, for business entrepreneurs. Basically, it looks at any geography, you give it an address, and it tells you how walkable that neighborhood is, based on its proximity to a variety of goods and services. What WalkScore measures, as it says down here, is how easy it is to live a car-light lifestyle. But it doesn't tell you how pretty the area is for walking. But what we're finding is that if an area is repulsive, even if it is next to a variety of goods and services, people will not walk. Here we are in downtown Davenport, where I lived for a few years. This was the Riverwalk Loft Apartments. Very much ballyhoo. We were all excited to get this stuff, and lo and behold, WalkScore gave it a 92, Walker's Paradise. Look at all the access to variety of goods and services, restaurants and stuff, within a short walk of the loft apartments. Those are the loft apartments. And there's a street you have to take to get to all those restaurants and goods and services. What happens? Nobody walks. Hardly a Walker's Paradise. But simply put, the more you engage the pedestrian, the more you offer their eyes, the further they will walk. That is why people will wait for 20 minutes for a prime parking space at the mall. But once inside, unbeknownst to them, they'll actually walk a mile in the mall because they're constantly being pulled by the store displays. Here's another neighborhood in Davenport, Iowa. Right next to a college campus, actually. Mix of uses, ground floor retail, some upstairs residential, but the 4-lane one-way street, the narrow sidewalks, the bleak storefronts do nothing for this so-called very walkable neighborhood. This is how you can make it more walkable. Land uses stay the same, tenants stay the same. It's reconfiguring the street into something that's two-way and a lot more pedestrian friendly. There's also this notion of bleak facades is a huge determinant of whether people will walk or not. So one of the most preeminent urban designers, Jan Gehl, who transformed a lot of New York City and single-handedly transformed Copenhagen to be one of the most bikeable and walkable cities in the world, came up with this metric. What he did was he mapped all the bleak, stark facades of Stockholm and all the bleak, stark facades of Copenhagen. And what he found, what he predicted, and what was confirmed is that these streets where you have blocks and blocks of facades like this have the least amount of pedestrian activity. So he's been a huge proponent of adopting what he calls active facade policies. Especially important for organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and Downtown On the Go, where when there's new development, you don't want ground floor parking. Get that up above. You want retail space, you want doorways, you want windows, you want doorways, you don't want long buildings. If there are long buildings, you want individual shops. You have to engage the eyes. Again, the mall concept. What if that mall was turned inside out and was on a street? That's the sort of stuff you want. You want signs, you want human activity, you want to engage the human eye, and then you will see a lot more people walking on the sidewalk. Also making sidewalks convivial. There's this race now between New York and San Francisco to see who can make their sidewalks the most convivial, it seems. New York calls theirs pop-up cafes, I think. San Francisco, we call them parklets. But the idea is the same. Removing a row of parking, putting up people places, which actually help the merchants enhance livability on the street. Also, most of American towns have a vast network of alleyways, and they're severely underutilized because the delivery trucks today are too big to use some of these alleyways. But they are fantastic pedestrian spaces, great potential, if designed slightly different. We can take alleyways that look like this and then turn them into something that looks like this. And this is what's happening like in Seattle, if you guys know Nord Alley, which was a very dilapidated alley for a long time. And now it's become one of the most hip, chic places to hang out in Seattle. And then at some point, you have to leave those convivial, pedestrian-friendly streets or sidewalks, and you have to cross the street. And that's where the crosswalks come in. This one's actually in Houston. The idea is make it fun, make it whimsical, but also make it more visible. Increasing visibility helps safety all around. You can have corporate public partnerships, like this bottle of correction fluid for FedEx Kinko's, or McDonald's French fries, if that's more your speed. But the best crosswalks are the ones that are designed to move the way people want to move. We all cut corners. We seldom walk orthogonally. And the idea is that, well, if we're going to cut corners, recognize that fact and create, because this actually is where a lot of pedestrian vehicular accidents occur, right in that little zone right there. Not vehicles running the red light, not pedestrians stepping in front of a vehicle on a red light, but a pedestrian stepping in front of a vehicle as this vehicle is slowing down, but intending to stop here instead of here. These crosswalks are very, very visible and give the pedestrians the ample space that they need. And then I want to talk real briefly about complete streets and the complete transit experience, because I know there's regulations, or I'm sorry, I keep saying this, there's guidelines and recommendations, but there might actually be some regulation. So who here has heard of a complete street? Okay. So basically what a complete street is, minimally, is it's supposed to balance all modes of travel. So you have a street, and we have a place for pedestrians to walk. We have a place about equally as wide for people to bike. And then we have a couple of travel lanes here for motorists and for bus riders. This, according to many engineers that I've worked with across the country, satisfies their requirements for a complete street. But do you guys think it's complete? What's missing, you think? People, for one. Safety is a great one. There needs to be much more than balance, this equity among all modes of travel. There needs to be safety, but not just real safety, perceived safety. You have to feel safe in that bike lane. You have to feel safe on that sidewalk. Comfort. There needs to be shade. There needs to be buffers. Like a cycle track, pedestrians want buffers too. They want something on the side, light posts, street trees, something physical that separates them from that 40-mile-an-hour dump truck. And interest, signs of humanity and visual complexity. How are we engaging people and engaging the eyes? This street is not complete. This street is complete. And this is what, if you adopt your complete street guidelines, this is what needs to be achieved, or at least strived for. You need to have transit with its own realm, at the very least cyclists with their own realm, pedestrians with their own realm, no bleak facades, active facades, with lots going on, people coming and going, lots of signs, lots of colors, lots of attention to detail and materials. This is engaging, this is compelling. And lastly, we need fun marketing. We need, if we're going to change the image of transit in America, we need to start with better PR campaigns. And the best, I think, is Metro out of Los Angeles. They're unique in that they employ a 30-plus person design team whose sole charge, their only charge, is make transit cool. And that is pretty formidable in LA, where we all know that car is king. But they've succeeded very, very well. In fact, I talked a little bit about this morning, but there was a transit measure, Measure R, back in 2008, that was proposing a 1/2 cent sales tax increase. Even a 1/2 cent sales tax increase is very unpopular for a lot of communities. But through very interesting marketing, compelling marketing, they even went to cafes, coffee shops, where choice riders, people who can afford to drive and can choose how to get around, we're going to go to the places where they frequent, and we're going to change their attitude and their perception. And it worked. Measure R was a supermajority, required 2/3 of the vote to pass, 66%. The vast majority of people drive. And it passed because of excellent marketing. Metro convinced the motoring public of Los Angeles that they need to pay for transit out of their own pocket. In California, we had a big issue last year, in particular with water conservation. It's a perennial issue. But until last year,